So the point of this talk here is we're going to tell you a little bit about the development for the wavestate and the modwave. And, you know, we announced the modwave earlier this year, and that'll be available pretty soon. We're very excited about it. It's a new product in the same line as the wavestate and the Op6, but it's got its own flavor and got some very interesting sounds that come out of it. So I'll talk a little bit about the development process that we have. KORG R&D is a group that we're in California in the U.S., and we're a pretty small group of engineers, and we've been together for a very long time. We're a very tight knit group, works together well, and our team did the software for the Kronos. We did some of the engine and DSP work for Grand Stage and Vox Continental, and our latest products are the wavestate and modwave, and I see Dan has something on his screen now. Beautiful. So I can talk a little bit about the process that we use for development. We have a great set of software engineers, and we've written these tools that basically allow us to develop our software on the computer, get it working, know how it's going to run, and we can design the hardware separate from that. And I can show you a little bit of prototype here while Dan's still setting up. This is like show and tell. Here's what I did on my summer vacation. Got the mic there. So we have a main board here, has a little Raspberry Pi module on it, audio ins and outs, and the front panel board has a display and knobs, and each of these is connected. There's a little MCU, a little microprocessor that will scan each of these knobs and let you see what's going on. So anyways, it's very simple, two boards, and the philosophy that we're going with is that when we make new products, we can keep the same main board that has the processor, the audio ins and outs, and we can swap out the front panel board and make each of those front panels have just what they need for a specific instrument.
All right. So, yeah, I'm back, and here's what we're going to do. I've got the modwave and the wavestate in front of me, and I am tempted to grab the camera, which is a completely wildly amateurish thing to do, but I think I'm not going to do that. And instead, I'm going to show you, when we're talking about the synths, I'm going to play the synths here, and I'm going to show you the editor, because that's the new thing that we've got to show for you guys today, is editors for both the modwave and the wavestate, and they're really neat. They have things that I've never seen before in a hardware editor, because these aren't just editors. They're not just editing patches on the computer that you can then send over to the synth. They are live, and so maybe we can just jump right to that, actually, and then we can talk about some other things later. So I'm going to go to the modwave first. I'm going to play here and look at what happens. So this is the modwave editor, and I'm going to go and I'm going to select a sound with a lot going on in it. And you can see that these are showing the real-time modulated values. There's a lot of the stuff jumping around here. The position of the oscillators is moving around. If I move knobs, then some interesting stuff starts to happen with pan. And if we go here and do something with, let's see, I'm going to select electricity poly. I really like this sound. And I can show you a little bit of chaos physics. What's happening right now is that I'm touching an XY pad on the synth, and this is actually showing on the synth too. The display is a little bit different, but it's similar. So you can see this blue dot moving around here, and as it goes, it's based on the idea of the chaos pad. So you've got an XY controller. So I could move around in a timbral space, a two-dimensional timbral space there. But the thing we added was this. So now I'm going to move my finger and lift off. So now this is taking a gesture that I made and throwing it into a virtual physical space. And you can see all the parameters down here. So you've got the height and the position of this virtual thing in the middle. It's either a pit or a hill. So the hill pushes the ball away, the pit pushes it in. You can control the shape of that. Gravity works naturally, but there's shallow, so it's kind of like more of a pasta bowl sort of thing. And if it's really high, then it has a lot of force, and if it's not really high, then it doesn't have a lot of force. You can move it around in the space, and you can change the tilt of the space. So now it's tilting over to this side. So, and the idea of this is that you can make a gesture in this physical space that then does something unexpected. So you can send it off, and you can learn how to play these different spaces because we've got a whole bunch of different physical spaces. So I've got something like this that kind of attracts and then spits it back. Oh, and this is really nice with this sound over here. So I'm going to go to Beagerish. This is an awesome sound. So you can see what's happening there is really complicated. As the ball moves into this space, it starts to modulate the way that this hill is shaped. And the hill jumps up and pushes it away again. So you can do all sorts of really, really cool things, which end up, the neat thing about this is that it ends up sounding like it's tempo synced, even though it's not. This is something that will go around forever, but you can also have things, as I was saying, like this, for instance. Here's a nice pad sound, and I can just move it. And it spins around nicely for a little while and then settles back in the center. Something cool here is that you can see that I've set the time to half speed. So you can actually modulate time, and I have some settings which do that. Let's see. Space-time. So in this, as you get farther to the side, time speeds up. You can see the little orange ball under time speeding up. And as you go back to the center, time slows down again. And that has the effect of making the ball move more quickly at the extremes. And the effect of that is there's a real parameter effect of that too, which is that it's going to spend less time at the extreme points. So you can have something that has sort of the normal sound in the center and then some weird effects happening on the edges, and have those be moved through quickly because time speeds up as you go to the edge. So I don't know if people have questions about chaos physics. It's a really neat thing. So this is an example of just using chaos physics manually. So physics is off right now. So you don't have to use the chaos physics. And in fact, as long as your finger is on the pad, you're controlling it manually. It's only when you lift off that the physics starts taking effect. So in this case, for instance, we've got... So... and that's with it off, and that's cool, and you can definitely play that. But then if you turn the physics on, so again, this is kind of cool because it's actually capable of going very fast. You can hear this; it's faster than it can draw. So you can go everywhere from just slow physical gestures to these long, meandering, ambient gestures to LFO speeds. It's pretty fun.
And that chaos physics is just one of the controllers that we have there. Of course, you have mod wheel, and you have a whole set of what we call mod knobs that are assignable knobs that you can assign to multiple destinations from the same knob. So with one gesture, it could be affecting the filter cutoff, the resonance, the effect level, an LFO speed, any of the parameters.
Yeah. So
let's talk a little bit about the difference between modwave and wavestate.
All right, Andy, you want to take some of that?
So the wavestate has some inspiration from the original wave station, and wave sequencing is a way to go through a list of samples, and you can crossfade between each step. Each step can have a different pitch or a different level. And we took that concept and we kind of blew it up for wave sequencing 2.0. So we made each of these lanes kind of an independent sequence. You can have at each step the pitch, the note value, which sample you're using, and then some step sequencer lanes. And they can all be doing different things. They can be looping in different ways. It gives you a chance to have these patterns that you couldn't even write down if you wanted to, or they could be just a straight ahead sequence. But it gives you a very flexible way to step through the sequence, and each note has its own wave sequence. So get some amazing sounds out of wave sequencing 2.0.
And the whole idea of that is to leverage the richness of samples, right? So you get these fantastically rich orchestral samples or synthesizer samples, weird pads, weird sound effects even. And you can take these samples and morph them into one another, or crossfade them into one another to make new evolving sounds. And they can be pads. Pads work great. They can be rhythms. That works great too. And I had fun on the wavestate doing things like unison lead, for instance, which is a sound that John Bowen did from the wave station, and taking that and sticking into wave sequencing 2.0. But you can use them just as sort of an oscillator sound behind a subtractive synthesis. And that's all really neat. But the one thing that you can't do with samples is to change the fundamental timbre very much. Right? You can use filters and you can use effects, of course, but you don't have the sort of control that you do on an analog synth, for instance, to change the timbre in real time. And that's where the modwave comes in. So the modwave is a wavetable synthesizer, and it deals fundamentally with single cycle waveforms, but lots of them, and moving between them. And so the idea of a wavetable is that you can have something that sweeps through. You can have something that sweeps through a bunch of single cycle waves, and it can either step through or crossfade. But the neat thing about it is it doesn't sound like it's crossfading. It sounds like the timbre is seamlessly morphing from one place to another. And so you get things like this, for instance. This is a sort of didgeridoo sound. And there's filtering going on in there, but there's also movement between these chaotic tables. And the magic thing about it is that it doesn't sound like it's crossfading from one sample to another. It just sounds like the timbre is seamlessly transforming from one place to another. And you can do that in position in a wavetable. You can also do this very special thing that we've got on the modwave, which is to have two wavetables going simultaneously and then fade between them, blend them in real time. And of course, you have these morph processes that are sort of like pulse width modulation and sync. And we, in fact, do have a couple of different variations of pulse width modulation and sync. But then also some things that you really couldn't do in the analog domain, like flipping the waveform on itself and mirroring it around. And all of those things can be controlled in real time. So you get all this dynamic stuff happening in the sound that you can control. And I mean, here's another, this is sort of a virtual analog-ish sound. But you can make it more, kind of hear all of the movement, most of the movement go away, and then add in subtle stuff to make it richer.
Yeah, and you have this kind of a three-dimensional space of waveforms, right, that you can sort through, and you can sweep through the position in one dimension. This A-B blend is kind of another dimension, and each of those things can be swept with an envelope, with an LFO, with any of the mod sources that you want. They can be done by hand by a mod knob, chaos physics, and all of those things can be being changed at once.
And I wanted
it really gives you lots of possibilities in this space of sound.
And the other thing is that these tables can be loaded in different ways. So we actually have to load the tables and generate some of them in real time when you load a sound. And so someone had the bright idea of the fact that we didn't have to necessarily render them the same way every time. So there are all sorts of different choices for rendering. You can do additive synthesis processes. You can do saturation. You can reverse the order. You can have them automatically fade out so they create a transient. And with A/B blend, you can load the same table with two different rendering methods and then fade between them. And again, that blending doesn't sound like a crossfade. It sounds like you're just seamlessly transforming them. So it can sound like a filter sweep. It can sound like increasing amounts of distortion. It can sound like, distortion, good distortion. We're only about good distortion here. Or it can sound like additive synthesis or things that you haven't heard before because we hadn't heard them before. And that's actually something that we want to talk about, which is making a system that is complex and controllable, but that does things that we don't expect. So Andy mentioned modulation before. We made this decision long ago with the platform to just make everything modulatable, unless there was a real reason not to. And so you don't have things where it's like, oh, I've only got one modulation path into this. You can modulate any of the front panel parameters from up to 31 sources at the same time. And there's no limit to how many destinations a source can have. So it's this massive, massive modulation matrix lurking under the hood. And that's one of the special things that we have about this, I think, is that we're really trying to open it up to experimentation and creative use.
And we've built all this complexity into the instrument, but at the same time, our philosophy is that, we want instant gratification, as we all do in this society. You can walk up to this thing and you can play some notes, and it's going to sound fantastic right out of the box, and turn a few knobs, and you're doing something that is, completely different from what you started with. If you want to dig in farther, we have more modulation, we have more controllers, and it opens up the space of things that you can do exponentially. But at the top level, you can select sounds very easily. You can add modulations very easily. You can just experiment with controllers and try things and get variations on sound very quickly. So, instant gratification is what we're looking for there. But if you want more, we got more.
And I wanted to, I think we're over in 8 minutes or something like that. And we'll be hanging out for chat afterwards. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work. But we'll be here, and we'd very much like your comments on these synths, and also any questions that you might have, and also any ideas that you might have for the future. What sort of synths would you like us to make next? And I want to show you just a little bit on the wavestate editor, because I think people would like to see that. So now we've got an editor, and I wanted to show you just really quickly how you can see the wave sequence in real time. So you can do things like editing steps by dragging and adding steps, but one of the main things is that you can see the stuff in real time. So this is a random sequence. So the sample lane is hopping around. I can go to this where so I've just switched to a different sound, and you can see how the timing lane and the sample lane are interacting. Increase the loop end here. So now you can see how these different lanes are phasing against each other, and you can see more about the values of the lanes. These lines show volume in the sample lane, length in the timing lane, and of course the shapes in the shape lane. So we're hoping that this is going to really open things up for people. You can do all sorts of neat things with this too. So for instance, let's say I want to modulate my shape lane loop with the filter LFO. Now I can just drag and create a modulation, and that modulation shows up here, and then I can adjust it here, and maybe I want to modulate something in my envelopes with a filter LFO. I can just drag on top of there. Oh, that's not quite working yet. That's good. That was working in the modwave editor yesterday. So anyway, drag and drop a modulation and real-time display of modulation values. You can see my filter hopping around up here. And again, this is stuff that I've never seen on an editor for a hardware synth. It's really acting a lot more like what you might expect from a plugin interface, giving you real-time feedback from the sound. So we're really excited about this, and these editors will be shipping very soon. The editor for the modwave will be available when the modwave ships, and the wavestate editor librarian will be available soon. So excited about that. And I'm going to turn off my.
Okay, it's beautiful. We're almost out of the session here. So Dan's point about the editors was the thing that I think is very exciting about it is you have the front panel. We've tried to make it very simple to when you turn a knob, you adjust the parameter, and we put as many parameters on the front panel as we could so that you can do your quick editing and quick live adjustment. But having an editor, it just gives it another way to look at these sounds and to visualize the wave sequence, and another way to interact with the sounds, and opens up even more possibilities. I guess one thing that I wanted to touch on quickly before we exit is this. The wavestate was kind of a reimagined idea of what wave sequencing could be based on the wave station 30 years later. And we didn't want to just make wave station. We have a plugin for that, which you can get, which is awesome, by the way. We want to do something like, well, if we were doing it over again, what would we do different? And we have modern processors. We have all these things that we can do now. We had some new ideas. But we did have one idea that came actually from Chairman Kato, who's the head of our company. He said, I want you to get the guys that did the voicing from the original wave station. And it was a brilliant idea. We got John Bowen, Peter Schwartz, John Lemkool, whom am I missing? We got a lot of people that were involved deeply with the original wave station. We got them to do the voicing for the wave state. We got a few new guys, Airwave, and who else did we get? We got
Airwave was the main.
If I'm forgetting,
and of course, let's mention Daniel Rodier, because he was an intern and tester, and he did some great stuff for us.
Yeah, and these guys were able to take the ideas that they learned from way back in the day, wave sequencing, and expand it to wave sequencing 2.0 and come up with some fantastic stuff.
And I'm going to address something people have asked a couple questions about the editor. I can see. I'm sorry, I didn't have the comment thing open before. The reason that we're using networking instead of sysx loading up is all the stuff that I just showed you about how it's responding in real time to the instrument. We couldn't do that if it was an offline sysx loading thing. The editors function as a front panel, essentially another front panel to the instrument. And that's how they're able to be so dynamic. There's no worrying about syncing. There's extensive undo. You can everything that you do is actually operating on the instrument directly, as opposed to this cumbersome process of pulling stuff in, showing it in your librarian, doing something, sending over one chunk of data and seeing if that works. And so all of it is live, and that's why we're doing it this way. And MIDI wouldn't be able to handle the traffic, I think, when we're talking about all of the parameters moving in real time, all those little orange dots that you could see moving around showing you the modulated values. That wouldn't be possible with MIDI. So that's why.
Well, thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk to you guys and show off some stuff. And like Dan said, I think we'll go out at the KORG booth. We can answer a few questions, or and if you have things you want to say to us, we'd love to hear it. Thanks.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. All right. Bye.
Peace.